Now this video is for those of you who have a gel chip in your boat, or you're working on something where you want to do the gel repair yourself but you don't quite know how. Now here is the chip or missing bit of gel that we've had. So we've used a tool, whether you've got grinder, finger sander, Dremel, anything like that, is we're going to play doctor today. So you need to dig away all the material that's either chipped or fractured back to the fiberglass, really, to give you sort of the new open wound as such that we're going to repair. So once you've done this, is beyond the tape currently, is we have sanded using 320 or 240 grit sandpaper, larger than the bit we need to repair. And that is because if any gel is to go on to the shiny finish, then it will fracture off and chip away and you don't get a nice new mechanical bond, which is what we're trying to fix here. Okay, so we've dug out the area, we've sanded around the area past this, and then we've just taped up close to, just so we don't make a mess on anything else on the mould, before we look to coat some new gel coat in it. Now we've mixed up some black gel coat to match the blacks, come out the same pot so we know it's going to match. This is just gel coat and not top coat, so we've had to add waxing styrene into this, and then we've also added catalyst as well to send it off. Now to apply this, because it's such a small area, I'm just using a McDonald's stirring stick, which I have plenty of because you don't end up with a physique like mine by eating salads. So you could apply using a brush, a stick, a paster, fillet knife, whatever you're sort of comfortable with or whatever you have to hand really. This plastic bottle we've cleaned out of acetone prior just to get rid of any water residue or contaminants that may be in it. So when applying this, I definitely don't want to go over the tape, okay, because that's just going to cause problems later on. We just want to stay just inside the lines. Obviously you want to stay a little bit proud of the repair because we're going to have to sand it down, and you just don't want to go too far or have the edges too proud, because if the edges are too proud and you've got to sand this back in and fair it and make it all nice, then what can happen is you end up removing more material around what you're trying to repair than what you're trying to take off in the first place. Okay, so just get that in all nice and smooth where you want it to be and flatten it out. And again, this is why we've keyed up either side of this, just so that you're going to get a nice mechanical bond into anything that's on there. So you want to tape those edges down relatively flat and then just blend in a bit nicer. You want to try and get the middle a little bit proud, just to get that on there, and just paste that in nicely. And then I would advise, whenever you've done a repair, whether you've gone over the tape, if you've not, it's not too bad. If you've gone over the tape, take it off before it goes off, because it's only going to stick underneath what it is that you've just done. And then it's a pain in the arse because you've got to dig out even more than what you wanted to in the first place. Okay, so once this goes off, you can use a heat gun to try and speed it up. The downside of heat guns is just be careful, because if you can overheat it, then any air that's trapped inside this, microscopic bubbles, will expand, because heat does expand. And then when you go to fair it, you'll end up with microscopic bubbles in the gel coat. Depending on how anal you want to be over it, then it doesn't really matter. Obviously, at least this way, even at this state now, it is covered, it is watertight, nothing's getting back into there, and the hull or whatever component you're repairing is sealed. So we'll give that a little bit. It should take about 20 minutes to start stiffening up. We're going to grab the heat gun anyway and just give it a blow just to warm the air up around it, because it's quite cold today. You can always warm up the back of the component, or the back of the, if you can get to it, just that way the heat will transfer through it rather than having that direct heat going into that gel. So we'd added a bit of heat and left it overnight to dry. So now the gel's nice and hard. You should be able to get your nail and dig it into the gel, and it shouldn't leave a print. If it leaves a print, it's still a little bit soft. It's a little bit soft, it's not going to sand as well or as easy. The transition is going to be a bit different for what you need. So we've taken some 240 grit sandpaper now to get the bulk of the shape back of what we need, okay? So we've flattened it all in so it looks like it should do, and it's tied in. So now you want to leave it a little bit proud, because as you work through the grades of sandpaper, you're going to end up taking this down a little bit more. So you just got to be careful you don't lose any more material off the sides than is completely necessary. So we're going to get some 320 now and work our way up to 320, 500, 600, 800, 1200. Then we're going to give it a polish, and then that should be the job done. So we've got some different grades of sandpaper here. So now these are wet and dry. So when you're sanding, you sand it dry to cut the material back, and then you can swap over to wet to get the smoother finish. So you want to keep the material clean to avoid scratches, because the dust left over from the previous grade is obviously grittier and more rough than what you've put on before. So the more you clean it, the more cleaner you keep it, the better the finish is going to be at the end. Now we've sanded up to 1200 with the wet and dry. So this is pretty much the finished product now. You should be able to wipe this off, clean it with a rag or whatever you need to do. Look at the finish, it should look pretty flat, but with a slight satin finish on it. Okay, so now the repair's there and slightly on this back lip. So you can use your hands more than your eyes in some cases. After a bit of practice, that you can see or feel what the finish is going to be like. So now we're going to give it a polish with some heavy speed cut compound, and all that's going to do is just obviously shine this area back up to look like the rest of this here, and then it'll also show us if there's any sanding mark from the sandpaper or grit marks or scratches left in it that we might need to readdress, whether we have to go back with a bit of wet and dry and take them out, or whether they're just light scratches that we can just use the polishing compound to remove the final bit. So we're just going to spread on some cutting compound. Now, I understand not everyone can afford a polisher, so you can do this with a rag as well. Just do little circles. Just make sure you're getting some good coverage and working it in there. Okay, but this time, because we've got the tools, we're going to use the polisher, and we're going to start slow with the polisher and then work up our way up through the speeds. The slow speed allows us to basically massage the gel coat and get that really deep cut, and then the high speed is to finish it off and polish it. And then finally, just give it a wipe down with a cloth, microfiber, old t-shirt, whatever you've got. Use a little bit of acetone if you want to, just to remove a bit of the residue. Okay, and then that is it, it's ready for moulding now.